I want to start this video about stress management with a story about one of our supporters, a message they sent to us. She writes, I got married young and I spent 11 years in an abusive marriage.
2 years ago, I found the courage to leave and not go back. About 6 months after I left, my 11-year-old daughter watched in horror as her father tried to run me down in the parking lot of my work. Since this time, I've been struggling financially to support myself and my daughter. I recently paid off some debts, which freed up some money that would allow me to return to school next term, but left me nothing to spend on Christmas. My daughter, who turned 13 yesterday, is very understanding of this, as well as supportive of me returning to school. However, she did voice concern that we won't be able to spend much time together, as I plan to be working full-time while I'm in school. This promise is my Christmas gift to her. Inside the box are 26 dated cards, 2 a month, with 2 bonus cards for mini vacations. Each card promises an exclusive mommy-daughter day. There are baking days, mani-pedi days, ice skating, coasting, trips to the museum and the zoo, movie dates, and make a Pinterest craft days.
I think these promise cards and this idea of a gift embody a lot of what a promise is. And I could talk about the issue of domestic violence and a number of things, but I guess what it comes down to for me, for this story, is how stressful life can be. And as if life wasn't hard enough, we have to add to that with our promises, it seems. This stress starts to build up. I mean, think about this story, this case in particular. You have everything that's going on in life, and of course the daughter is stressed as well, but now as she makes these promises, 26, those are commitments that are incredibly meaningful, not only to the daughter, but to the relationship with this mom, and to break those promises would be so unfortunate. And as we make commitments, each one of those adds up a little more and a little bit more when it comes to obligation in our lives. Okay, so we know that life is stressful, but what are some of the impacts of this stress, even on our physical health? Well, this is something that's been a curiosity of the human mind for a long time. And in 1967, 2 psychologists actually started to research this. And in 67, psychiatrists Thomas Holmes and Richard Rhea examined the medical records of over 5,000 people and tried to find a correlation between stress and its physical effect on our lives. And so what they did was create what's now known as the Holmes and Rhea stress scale. Now, this is a list that has 43 life events that can create stress in our lives. And what they did as experts, they empirically sort of rated the amount of stress that could come with each one of these events, starting at 100, going all the way down in points. And they said, okay, here's a little quiz you could almost give yourself, add up those points, and then based on the results of that, we can see how much your actual physical health is being affected by your stress. So what are some of those life events that are on this scale? Death of a spouse, divorce, marital separation. These are obviously extremely stressful events, but if you go all the way down at the bottom of the list, you'll see things that almost seem like they should be joyous, like vacation and a major holiday. The truth is that there are a lot of things that cause stress in our lives, and during the holiday season, I'm sure you've felt that stress that comes with it. And so things go up and down on this scale, and it's important to note that this was empirically created, meaning by an expert's mind of these 2 psychiatrists, really looking at their expertise and understanding and try to create this score. So it's not purely scientific, but it is a good place to start. And I think this list should change probably over time. Even in the digital age that we bring ourselves into, there's probably digital moments of stress that were just never even possible back in 1967. But they did validate this to some degree by doing a study of the list that they created in 1970. They actually got 2,500 US sailors and they gave them this survey. Over the course of 6 months, these sailors had their health monitored in detailed record, and they were looking through the correlation, the cause and effect of these life events and how it affected their health. And they saw a positive correlation of 0.118, a positive 0.118 correlation. And actually, I talked to one of the PhDs at work for, because I said I would, in sociology, Dr. Carlton Mathis, and he said that this statistical correlation isn't actually that strong. You need a 0.3 to really, and this is subjective, but to see a really positive correlation. To give a context, 1, so 1.0 is a purely cause and effect, and 0 is no correlation causation type of connection. And so 0.118 isn't that strong, but I think what this does is it gives us a chance to at least take an inventory. I mean, how often do we do something like that? Pause for a minute and see where we're at and look towards how we can get better. So even if it's not perfect, it's a first step to managing stress, is to just take inventory of it. That's what we recommend for you. So what is your score? Take a look at this list, add up the points, and see where you're at. Because if you are 300 or above, you're actually at risk for illness, according to the Holmes and Rhea stress scale. If you are 150 to 299, this is a moderate risk. It's actually reduced 30% from the risk at that 300 plus level. And then if you're under 150, you only have a slight risk of illness being caused by stress, according to this research. Now, after you do that stress test and kind of see where you're at, or at least have an understanding of it, now I think it's time to say, okay, well, I'm stressed at a certain level, according to this test or not. What do I do about it? If we're gonna be good with our promises, if we're going to manage this life that requires hard work, if we're going to not finger point so much at other people's broken promises and get too stressed about that, but rather focus on ourselves, and we've got to manage that stress. So what are some ways that we can do that? We did some research through the Mayo Clinic, just checking out some of their articles, and they do some good work over there. So one of the ways that they recommend is getting good sleep. So let's look at some of the hours that you might need depending on your age. Well, a newborn needs like 14 to 17 hours a day. I have friends who have newborns, so I don't think they really sleep that much, it seems. Kind of screaming a little bit at all the wrong hours, but that's what they're looking at, 14 to 17 hours a day. If you're at about 12 months, that's about 10 hours a night. Plus these, 4 hours worth of naps here and there. For someone who is 2 years old, that's 11 to 12 hours a night, plus some afternoon naps. 3 to 5 years, 10 to 13 hours, and then all the way to adults, where we need to get about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Now, I don't know many people who consistently get that, because they've got so many commitments in their lives, so many promises to keep, that this is something that falls to the wayside. But I literally calendar my sleep, like when should I go to sleep? And you'll see in our video about calendaring, if you watch it, about how important it is to kind of calendar out your days so you're making time for what's important. And I don't do the greatest job of getting this ideal amount of sleep, but at least I know and can plan towards something a little bit better. And I think that's what this is about. If you're going to make a commitment to get better sleep, to manage your stress and help your health, then it's about being realistic and taking a step towards better. And if you can get to that 7 or 9 area, that's awesome. Another thing the Mayo Clinic recommends is talking to somebody. And there's no chart to this or anything. It's kind of simple. Find a friend, a family member who really cares, who will listen to you authentically. Speak to a therapist or a counselor. Sometimes just getting it off your chest is really important. I mean, imagine how disappointed you might be, or one of our supporters might be, when a broken promise comes along and you start to bottle that up and you need to get it out. So think about talking to somebody. Reach out for help in even the most general of ways, just talking to a friend, or maybe journaling can be a way. But it's got to come out. If we're going to keep this all in, that's where it's going to stay. And I think we get pretty bitter, because the truth is there's a lot of broken promises in this life and a lot of promises to keep. So keeping that inside, I don't think is healthy, and I think it's important to vent constructively sometimes. Number 3, just exercise. You know, I wish I had something brilliant to say here, but you just got to do it, right? You got to commit the time to it, and you know, you see the pictures of our supporters and the incredible changes in their lives after really putting a plan together and staying committed to diet and exercise. And that exercise is hard, but it's about starting. And so I encourage you to look at what your first step is, and just a personal perspective of mine, try to find something you enjoy and try to find an accountability buddy that can do that with you. So for me, I play basketball because, well, I suck at it, but I really enjoy it, and so that gets me moving and going, and so that's one way that incentivizes me to exercise. And the second way is if I can just get somebody to come with me to go lift, that's gonna increase my accountability literally 5-10-fold, and you know, my personal feelings of it, because I'm gonna show up with that person who's gonna be more social. So you just gotta exercise, and that's a huge part of managing stress. People think it's just about our aesthetics of looking good, or you know, falling into some kind of social norm about weight, or you know, there are certain health benefits, obviously the longevity of our life, but stress, man, exercise can be so stress relieving. So consider doing that as a promise. This next one for me is huge, and that's deep breathing. And this is really weird because I'm not really into the hocus pocus of any sort of, I don't know, recommendation. I really like to look at research. So when people say things like yoga and deep breathing, I don't know. I don't really, I'm a little skeptical at first, but I remember even personally taking a blood pressure test when I was younger, like 22 years old maybe, and I was exercising regularly and doing okay, and I had like pre-hypertension levels for my blood pressure, which is bad for someone who's exercising in that age. And as I talked to the doctor, and he said, hey, this doesn't make sense. Why don't you take 5 deep breaths real quick, and then I'll take a look at your blood pressure. And so we do this, and literally my numbers like drop, they plummet to the point where I'm like, that's gotta be some kind of anomaly. But I'd always run into these, like, you know, corner pharmacies, and they got that machine you sit in, and you know, it pumps your arm, and it's absolutely true. I've done it a lot of times just to see how it affects me physically, and I've seen that in the numbers. And now, is that a long-term benefit? I don't know, but I've seen its temporary effect there. But more than that, picking up the practice of deep breathing in moments of stress has really emotionally helped me. You know, before I'm gonna yell and be upset about something, I tell myself deep breaths, even so much so that I literally had these like shoes with like little writing on the back of them, and they sewed in deep on one shoe, breaths on the other, because I needed this so much in this life of promises where it adds up so much. So deep breaths are hugely important, in the nose, out the mouth, and you can look up more deep breathing exercises, but it's very simple. Just do 3 to 5 before you're, you know, about to go off. Just take a deep breath, and this is really good for kids too. I do this with my little cousins, and when they're throwing temper tantrums, and I've seen that work, and it appears from the Mayo Clinic and their recommendation of deep breaths that it is clinically proven in some ways to help us manage stress. And this last quick recommendation is laughing, which seems sort of obvious and then also odd at the same time, but laughing has a lot of health benefits. A lot of short-term benefits, like a good laugh can really get our organs going and stimulates our organs. A lot of oxygen-rich air stimulates your heart, your lungs, and your muscles. And this really soothes a lot of tension, and it helps stimulate your circulation. And so look up some funny YouTube videos or funny dog videos, you know, just find a good comedian that you love, and in those moments of stress, go to that, you know? Find a place where you know that's just gonna be funny for you. And it seems weird because the last thing you wanna do is, when you're like stressed out of your mind, is change the tone so dramatically, but kind of force yourself to watch a funny video. I wanted to go over 5, but I will throw in a bonus 6 here, and that is pet therapy, which is a fancy word for just surrounding yourself with fur babies. I really am a huge dog person. My dog's actually in the hospital right now, and that's a little rough for me, but the point is that you can get a lot of love out of animals, and whether it's going to the shelter, volunteering, surrounding yourself with those animals, or just going to a friend's house to play with a pet, or having a pet yourself and spending time with them, it apparently makes a big difference, and the Mayo Clinic recommends it as well. Bottom line, you need to keep your stress in check. You know, we look at people who we look up as heroes, and we see these moments where they're doing such great things, and even if it's a fictional character in a movie, but we don't realize that in real life, being a hero for somebody, changing your own life or the lives of others, all this volunteerism and all the things that we recommend our supporters to do to help better humanity through Promises Made and Kept, it comes with stress. It's not always some motivational video that feels great or some story that has an amazing ending. Life is not a movie, right? We all know that, and so we've got to take these steps to be realistic and practical. And if we're going to make the promises that this world needs, and if we're going to keep those promises with the hard work that it takes, and if we're going to have to deal and handle all the broken promises that come to us, well, we're going to need to manage our stress. So take some time and don't think about it as just another video to watch. Really calendar some time to take this seriously. And if you find yourself trying to live a life of honor, you will realize that stress is also part of it. So let's manage it.